Luke chapter 16. Again, if you're just joining on YouTube, we are reading through one chapter of Luke each day here on stream. This is like the third chapter that I've done in a row. But if you are on the YouTubes and you're following the YouTubes, it's one chapter each day that I am posting leading up till Christmas. This is a live recording. So chat is active and we've been pulled on some rabbit trails. Last video we were talking about, or the last chapter that we were on, last video on YouTube, we were talking about baptism and we were talking about the parable of the prodigal son. And I ended up getting fired up. I ended up getting passionate and I probably ended up calling people out, and think there might be some fun comments on that one. But we are reading one chapter and posting on YouTube per day leading up to December, because there are 24 chapters of Luke. There are 24 days before Christmas. Therefore, we are learning the reason for the season. It's not just about elves on shelves and a fat man in a red suit. It is about Jesus Christ, our Savior and salvation. Luke chapter 16, English Standard Version, verse 1. He also said to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. He called to him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, and you can no longer be manager. And the manager said to himself, what shall I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me into their house. So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, how much does my master owe you? He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to them, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. He said to another, and how much do you owe? The other said, 100 measures of wheat. So this is a manager. Okay, I thought the master removed him from management. So the manager said, take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into their eternal dwellings. I'm kind of wondering about that one. There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges brought to him by this man was wasting his possessions. And called to him and said, what is this I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, for you can no longer be manager. The manager said to himself, what shall I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig. I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me into their houses. So summoning his master's debt one by one, he said to the first, how much do you owe my master? 100 measures. He said, take your bill, sit down, and quickly write 50. And then he said to another, and how much do you owe? 100 measures of wheat. Take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into their eternal dwellings. The one who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. The one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. Popper says the manager is accused of being a bad employee. The master gives him a 2-week warning, and the manager takes action to gain favor with the master's debtor. Okay. I think that makes sense. And I guess this is kind of the extrapolation on it. One who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. One who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in what is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Yeah, it's a lesson to use physical things to gain favor with the lost and open a door to witnessing to them. It is so, and a lot of people use this as an argument for tithes. This is not an argument for tithes. Yes, there's among many lessons that be gleaned from that parable. This is not an argument for tithes. If God gives us stuff, we are supposed to be able to give back. And it's been a struggle for me, because I would love to be able to give and give and give and give. And I sometimes realize what Paul says is, I wish some of you were not even married as I were. Because you cannot serve God and money. You also sometimes cannot serve God and your wife. I'm going to call out Mama Dreams if she's still lurking. There are some situations where I would love to be able to give to charity. I would love to be able to give a lot more to charity. But my wife suffers from anxiety, and sometimes she worries about the bills. She worries about how much money is in the bank account. Now, one of the things I've wanted to do is be able to use Stream, YouTube, and I just smacked my mic, but use Stream and YouTube and all of the stuff to raise more charity. There is one charity in town that has popped up on my Facebook feed that I believe I would love to help. It is, they run a warming center. They actually help with the homeless. In my job, I have seen that there is a lot of people that are homeless, that are struggling, that are basically just kind of getting by and squatting in a house. And it breaks my heart. There's been a couple of times at work that somebody will come up and they don't have enough to finish paying. Last week, actually, there was a lady that came up and she got $6 in gas. That was it, $6 in gas. And she goes to pay for her gas, and she used a credit card. She didn't have any cash on her. She used a card, and it was partially approved. There was still $1 that was left there. Even though I sometimes worry that I'm going to come home and my wife's going to give me heck about it. Pulled out my card and I paid for the rest of her gas. There was one situation where the only word that I can put is a gaggle of grandmas comes up, and they ended up grabbing a bunch of junk food and paying with food stamps. That's an entirely different conversation. I sometimes wonder if maybe we should remove junk food and stuff like soda and all of that from food stamps. but it's so ingrained with gas stations now, you can't really do anything. But they paid with food stamps, and one of the ladies grabbed nachos. Nachos is a hot food. Food stamps don't pay for that. And she's like, I ain't got any money. I can't do it. I can't do it. Well, you've already got it. I can't really refund it. Well, I ain't got the money. So I pull out my card and I pay for it. And it's always, well, I can come pay you back. Don't worry about it. If I expect payment back, it's not a gift. If you want to do anything, if you want to pay it back, pay it forward. It breaks my heart. And I try to do everything I can to witness to these people. But I wish I'd be able to do more. I could imagine like partnering with the warming center and making up a giant taco buffet. And I could even, give a shout out for taco. It's the Alliance for Creative Outreach. There are people out there that might not be able to get to a church every day. Some churches close their doors and they're locked on Wednesday, and except on Wednesday and Sunday. But that's what we have here. That's what we have in the digital space is, we may be playing games, but everything we do, everything on this channel, everything on other channels like Christian Ninja and Ukulele and my taco team, Samus and Quiz, and those like Pastor Dustin and those like Lux Digital Church and I'm Watching You people. It's, yes, we might have church, we might have worship, we might have these things, but it's about fellowship. That is that is what the church is designed for. We are supposed to be here to fellowship and witness. And when the physical church is closing their doors unless you are doing a Bible study, or closing your doors unless you're doing worship, and the church is only open 2 days a week, how are you reaching anybody? The idea is if you're faithful in much, or if you're faithful in a little, you'll be faithful in much. I can't give a whole lot. I don't, my channel isn't blown up. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not bringing in tons of money. You bet your bottom dollar that if it was, the only thing I'd want is possibly get out of a trailer and move into an actual house. That would be cool. But after that, if the bills are paid, I'd give the rest away. That's what I'm doing. That's actually what I'm doing today. We're doing this isn't going to drop until Sunday, but here on stream, like in the live stream, any kind of support, bits, subs, all of that stuff, I'm going to try to keep track of it, and I'm paying it forward because I'm doing good right now. I'm okay. Now, in the future, it would be kind of cool if we can actually get maybe enough to pay the internet bill at least. Because I kind of need internet to be able to do this. So if the ministry could at least pay for the internet bill, that'd be cool. Anyway, I'm on a rabbit trail that I don't need to be on. I am moving on. I think I'm going to take a break after this chapter because I got to use the bathroom. 15. Wait, is this 16? Yeah, 16. 16 verse 14. The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all of these things, and they ridiculed him. He said to them, "You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. For what is exalted above men, or what is exalted among men, is an abomination in the sight of God. The law and the prophets were until John. Since the good news of the kingdom of God is preached, and everyone forces his way into it. But it's easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one dot of the law to become void. Could really go on an extrapolation there. But for instance, everyone who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery. And he who marries a woman divorced from her husband commits adultery. What about this? My wife is divorced. We have both remarried. This is actually my third marriage. Am I committing adultery? This is a topic that there's been a lot of discussion on too. My wife, she has a pretty good excuse. I'm not going to go into it, but she has a pretty good excuse of why she divorced the last dude. My first wife, I can't necessarily say that she committed adultery. On one hand, she's told me that she has. She's actually told me that my oldest son is not my son. And then on the other side, she says she hasn't. So I'm getting two conflicting views. My second wife, I know that she committed adultery. She admitted to it. So am I able to actually divorce her? But then another argument that can be pushed forward, and it can kind of go on to this, is I was not technically in the faith when I divorced my last wife. My last wife was not a Christian at all. In fact, the last time I talked to her, she said that she became a polygamist and a polyamorous. So she became a polyamorous Satanist. Like, okay. I mean, if that's what floats your boat, I guess. But now, in this situation, in my marriage to my wife, we are both in that position where we're doing it right. It's not just me trying to please her. It's not just her trying to please me. It's the fact that we are both pointing toward God. And that's why I can say, hey, I'm going to be celebrating my 10-year anniversary. This is the longest marriage that I've ever had, the longest relationship that I've ever had. So do I believe that God's in it? Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you are a confessing Christian, if you are a young person and you have not actually married, you have not gotten into a relationship, if I may give you any kind of advice going forward, remember one of the first sins, like the very first sin from a man, God specifically said, you put it in chat if somebody wants to, Genesis chapter 3, verse 17, because you have listened to your wife. My wife hates when I quote this, but one of the very first things, Genesis 3:17, to Adam he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful and toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. So think about that. You haven't got into a relationship. You are working and you hate work. All men do, promise. Because you have listened to your wife, now you must toil the ground, you must eat by the sweat of your brow. Adam was cursed because he listened to Eve. Do not approach a relationship trying to please the woman and trying to go with her every whim. Yes, should you I mean, yeah. Adam's problem was he didn't call out his wife. He didn't say, hey, we're not supposed to do that. So if we want to get technical, Adam's original sin was Adam was a simp. Yes, both were wrong. Both were wrong. If we're going to make a joke, that is my joke. The original sin of man is bro was simping. It is the idea that the first thing that the man needs to do, the man needs to please God. If the man is pleasing God and joins to his wife, who is also trying to please God, then they will always come together. Think about that. If man is trying to please God and wife is trying to please God, they will always come together. But in a relationship, if man and woman are constantly trying to line up things and they're constantly trying to meet each other, they might come together sometimes, but if there's nothing to guide it, then it's very easy for things to get off track. But if both are pointing toward God, they will always come together. Always. And now for this. My opinion is this is a parable. My opinion, this was a parable. A lot of people say that it points to Lazarus, and Lazarus is one of the people that Jesus raises. I feel like this is a parable. Seems big question. If Adam didn't fall, would we not be where we are today? Or would it only be a matter of time? Or not to think of it this way because history is history? I'd say not to think of it that way because history is history. Okay. That is something where it's God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. God's ways are higher than our ways, and we dwell on it. But it is something that we can have as a lesson going forward. Okay. It is not simply the pleasing of the other person in the relationship. Because if it's simply, if it's simply pleasing of the other person in a relationship, then things don't end up meshing out. That's how people start going their own separate ways. It's two people come together and they're trying to please each other and things don't end up working. And then all of a sudden they end up splitting. Okay. If in a relationship, in a marriage, if God is not central, that's what's going to end up happening. Two people come together and then they end up splitting. It is when you put God as the central part of that relationship that it ends up coming together. And that is the secret to a long relationship. I'll stand on it. And that is probably one of my hills to die on. It's God is the secret to a long relationship. Divorce has run rampant in this country. There are so many broken families. There are so many kids that have been raised without a father. There are so many kids in some situations that have been raised without a mother. And that is the problem. We don't know what the family is. To keep a relationship together, both members of the relationship must honor God. They must be seeking God. As Onyx says, if God put someone into my path, I might get married down the line, but I'm 26 and not there yet. As far as I know, single, but not concerned with marriage personally at this time. And that's a really good idea. That's a good idea too. Paul said in some situations, it's like, it would be better if you were me and you were never married. Because the good thing, I will straightly say that the good thing about not being married, not having kids, is you can focus on doing what God has planned for you. there are times and there are situations where I can honestly say that I feel like I could do more if it wasn't for kids, if it wasn't for the marriage. But in my position, I wouldn't trade my kids for anything. I wouldn't trade my wife for anything. So I'm grateful that God has put her in my path. And I just heard my wife saying, I hear you. So, but yeah, I wouldn't trade my wife for anything. I wouldn't trade my kids for anything. And I am grateful that God has given me both. It is a blessing. And Mama Dreams, my wife, has been a blessing. There are days where I can't get up, that I can't get motivated. And she gives me that strength. I'm gonna try to get through this because, as I said, I got to use the bathroom. Chapter 16, verse 19. There was a rich man clothed in purple and fine linen who feasted sumptuously every day, and at his gate was laid a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who desired to be fed what fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, even the dogs came and licked his sores. The poor man died and carried by the angels of Abraham's side, or to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. And in Hades, being in torment, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. He called out, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the end of his finger in water to cool my tongue, for I am in anguish in this flame. But Abraham said, Child, remember that in your lifetime received you good things, and Lazarus in this manner bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in anguish. And besides all this, between us a great chasm has been fixed, in order that those who would pass from here you may not be able, and none may cross from there to us. And he said, Then I beg you, Father, to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, so that he may warn them, lest they also come into this place of torment. But Abraham said, They have Moses and the prophets, let them hear them. And he said, No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent. And he said to him, If you do not hear Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced if someone should rise from the dead. Sorry, Tangents. I actually enjoy the interruption. So that's one of the things I like. I want chat to bring it up, and I kind of want there to be tangents. I think it's better for, the discussion is better through the Bible reading for that. Sonic, dip my tongue to relieve a moment rather than requesting to be taken out of torment. That is a very good point. And that's one of the reasons why I tend to fall onto the fact that this is a parable, and there are people that will disagree with me. I'm going to say in that situation, we're going to have to agree to disagree. If you don't like my theology, then guess what? You don't have to watch. And if you want to say, there are those people that will say, well, it's we're supposed to endure things that we don't like. If you think that enduring watching a YouTube video, or if you think that enduring something like that, if that is your persecution, yeah, all right, fine. I'm sorry for persecuting you. But if you don't like me, if you don't like this theology, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. But that's a few of the things is when I read this, I get the feeling that it's a parable. My interpretation is it's a parable. Because first off, the dude was literally setting in fire and he had the ability to speak. I don't know about you, but if I'm actually engrossed in fire, I'm probably going to be screaming. I highly doubt I'm going to be able to keep on, have this conversation. Plus, not to mention, but if somebody would go from the dead, they're going to repent. And then Abraham says, no, they're not going to be convinced even if someone should rise from the dead. So this is Christ saying, I'm going to rise and you're still not going to be convinced. And it's just in the chapter, we've had parable. Okay. it to me, it lines up as a parable. It kind of reads as a parable. But I've had discussions with people about Abraham's bosom was a real thing, that it was kind of like the happy part of Hades in the Greek, the Greek idea of the afterlife. So I don't know about all that. I'm not going to argue, because I don't want to argue with people that want to believe that way. If that's the way you want to believe, I don't think it's really a salvation issue. This is something that we can talk about and we can discuss. But if you're going to sit here and argue with me, and you're going to say that, oh no, you have to believe it this way, I'm going to go back to one of the things I previously said. If everything that I believe has to line up with everything that you believe exactly, then you're not acting like Jesus. You're acting like the Pharisee. Popper says Jesus uses commonly understood things in his parables. Yes, he does. And that's kind of the one thing, is because it has that personal name. Yeah, it's because it has the personal name of Lazarus. And that's where everybody falls. It's because a lot of Jesus's parables don't have the personal name. And I believe it's in either next chapter 17, or maybe chapter 18, that we have Lazarus being raised from the dead. So it's like, oh, well, we have Lazarus here, and then we have Lazarus there. So yeah. It is the only, Popper says, this is the only parable in which Jesus uses a name. I suspect it's foreshadowing of him raising Lazarus from the dead. It's very possible. It is very possible, especially because he says here, if they do not hear Moses and the prophet, neither will they be convinced if someone should rise from the dead. So it's very possible that he is kind of foreshadowing this event that I believe he knew was going to happen. And there's actually, maybe in reading this, because, the idea is Luke made a ordered structure of events. And that's one of the things that Luke said, that he, like at the very beginning, Luke made an ordered structure of events. Then it is very possible that in putting this before Lazarus rising, it's putting emphasis on the fact that neither will they be convinced if someone should rise from the dead. Boom, Lazarus rises from the dead. I don't think Jesus knew he was going to raise Lazarus, but the Holy Spirit gave Jesus this parable. That's one way to think of it. Yes. That's actually probably a good way to think about it. It's the idea, but as I said, it's Luke putting an ordered chapter of events, and that's one of the things that he specifically said at the beginning, is I'm making an ordered list of events. And he puts this before the rising of Lazarus, and it's specifically, they're not going to be convinced if somebody should rise from the dead, and then boom, Lazarus is risen from the dead. So we can go back and forth, and I think in that thing, that's the milk and the meat. It is very, the one thing I know is hell is referred to as fire because they knew fire was painful. And they're trying to give an idea of what being separated from God would be. Separation from God is to be separated from all good things. To not be in pain is a good thing. So the opposite of the good thing, to not be in pain, is to be in constant pain. My kind of feeling on hell is the idea that hell, or fire, is warm and produces light. And warmth and light are both good things. if being separated from God means being separated from all good things, then light and warmth can't be in hell. So it's kind of like experiencing everything from fire without the good things of fire. So like if you can imagine old burning, yeah, that's wrap your head around that one. Sonic says, even on Earth, we experience separation. Yeah, that's very true. Very, very true. All right. I'm going to take a quick break because I've got to use the bathroom. Yes, fire cooks food, even, but also can cause destruction. I'm going to take a break. I am going, as I said, no, Sonic, we're not playing Stardew. It is Friday. Friday is Fortnite or Final Fantasy. So if EG Wife and Enigmatic comes in, probably going to be playing Fortnite with them. And if not, we're going to be jumping into Final Fantasy. Stardew. How about maybe me and you can do some Stardew tomorrow. I will go live. I'll make an exception. I'll go live on Saturday and we'll play some Stardew tomorrow. How's that sound? All right. I really got to use the bathroom. I want to take a quick break and I'll be back. I will have to figure that out. This is just popping into my head. I don't have specifics. I'm going to go take a break. I will be back.